I've always been somewhat claustrophobic, and I suspect just the recent stresses of the time and stuff. It was working up, and I wanted a way of trying to release that claustrophobic, and it was affecting me being able to fly.
Mhm.
So you get in the closed cabin area and stuff. So that's what I went there for, and we didn't touch any of that. Nothing like that came up. Nothing, we didn't deal with any of that. So um, went in for that. That was the whole idea. And as soon as things got started, all of a sudden it was just like a movie being played back to me with the with what happened. Way, you know, well, that was 2019, so 45 years before. And yeah, it just everything started just playing through from that point. Um, while laying on the table, I'm stuff's coming up and I'm talking about it, but it was interesting. It was almost like, okay, now I remember this. I remember that. And I remember when we were done, I thought we'd been there maybe an hour. And it was a friend of mine that did a hypnotherapy session, and it was 2.5 hours. It went a long time. And I had no clue it was that long. So I don't even know if I answered your question or not, but but that's what I went in for, and that's what ended up happening.
No, but it's really interesting. And during that session, so you haven't touched upon the claustrophobia and you haven't worked on that in it, but you did recall that you had a near-death experience. So somehow you have never remembered that until that session, right?
Yeah, so as a all my life I remember the fall. I fell 8 or 9 feet head first on the concrete. I grew up on a farm, still live on a farm. Anyway, on that farm, I fell into this area and known as the in-ground silo, and um, I remember the fall. I remember. I've always remembered like falling and seeing the dirt wall go by me. I remember seeing my oldest brother and seeing my mom, and then like bits and pieces of seeing me in the car when my parents were taking me to, well, it wasn't a hospital, it was a doctor, a local town doctor. And um, it never occurred to me until after I saw that NDE that from the point of view that I saw myself with my parents and with when I first fell, like, if you fall and land on the ground, you lay on the ground, you're looking up. And I remember always in my mind, it was seeing my brother and my mother together, but I'm from a point of here. I'm not laying on the ground looking up at them. I'm from the side. I just never thought nothing about it. I always just knew that they were there. And then there was the image of me laying in the car. Back then, that would have been like a late 60s car and long vinyl bench seat. And I just remember seeing myself laying, and I've got my head at my mother's lap and my feet over at my dad's lap because, I'm 4.5, 5 years old. But I wasn't looking up at them. I remember seeing myself in it. Never, never even crossed my mind until the NDE came up and like, wait a minute, that's not even possible. But it's just what I always, that was the only parts that I'd remembered.
Yeah.
So everything else just was like being reminded. Some things, honestly, I had no memory of. It seemed like a brand new experience. But yeah, it was it was a surprise.
Can imagine. So, what did you remember about that experience that you forgot in the meanwhile?
Um, in the early parts, it was being like pulled up by this warm kind of palish yellow light. Um, and seeing as I was being pulled up and away, it was very warm. Now, mind you, this was summertime when this happened, so it was warm out anyway. But just seeing, like the initial scene being further away where I'd fallen and my mother and my brother are there, and then seeing the vehicle where I'm in the vehicle, but still kind of keep pulling away. And it wasn't like I was going straight up or anything. It was just kind of like I was going at an angle. And one of the things I ended up remembering was being pulled, but not by just an energy. It turned out at first it was that yellow energy, but then I realized I was being pulled by my left hand, and somebody had me by my left hand and was pulling me. And initially it was yes, coming from a kid's point of view of being afraid. Um, and then the mind spinning. So some of the stuff I remembered was just that kind of a thing, being pulled and being really not knowing what was going on. A lot of thinking, a lot of there was fear to it and things like that. But I have to tell you that um, down the road, as I've kept going back and sitting with this NDE, that all that mind spinning and all that kind of fear really wasn't. It's like it wasn't. That wasn't like the NDE. That wasn't the whole story. That was my lesson, part of my lesson, which is very common for us, and it's still something I work on. Which what I mean is get out of the head and just let go. Feel the heart, because the energy from that. One of the things I remembered was the energy of the hand of the person carrying me was very calming. Not carrying me, pulling me is what I meant. It was very calming, and I could literally feel it going up my left hand into my shoulder to my heart area. But the mind was just spinning. Like, where am I going? Why is he pulling me? Why won't he let me go? Things like that. It was just, I'm looking back and forth, looking back towards my family, and looking at where we're going, and just not. It was the mind was in control, but yet, of course, there's this guy that's pulling me, and it's literally a man pulling me that's just plain dark complexion, dark hair, plain tan clothes. But I never felt uneasy or bad with him. It's just my mind was going. So that was a lot of what I remembered. And as it got further into NDE, it was more the stuff that felt right, but I didn't necessarily remember. But yeah, it was it's like almost like the first half or first third of the whole NDE experience I couldn't realize was all about getting out of the head, getting out of the mind, and get into the heart, and trusting and feeling. And I know when I spoke with people about this early on, or even last year, I was still trying to process this whole thing. While why this way? Why did it happen this way? Why did you get why was I being pulled away? And it's like, surrender, let it go, and that's where it kind of came down to. This guy that was pulling me, I just remember it's like running through my mind, why won't he let me go? Why was he doing this? Why is he pulling me away? Mind you, I'm reliving this as a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, so I'm a little kid. And I remember he stopped all of a sudden and turned back to me, not in a rough way, anything. Once again, very calm, very energy was just good with him, and just simply says, "You're not done." And he turns and starts walking again, pulling me along. And there's a couple times he talked to me, and each time I would get a little more calm. But I just remember still that didn't, that wasn't answering my question. Why is he pulling me along? What's going on? This guy, I don't know. And then that's when the soul started course, I just saw they were people, and I didn't know they were souls until he used the word souls. I didn't even know, I don't think at that time I even knew what souls were. But the people started coming from a distance, see a handful here and a handful there, and then it just kept more and more and more and more kept coming, and so then my focus was looking at them because he's not paying them any attention. He's just walking right along, and I'm being pulled. And it's like they're coming towards us, and we're going towards them, and of course my mind is spinning in different things, and it just you know oh, not to mention that where we're walking is just as vast as it's like walking in space, but there's nothing around. There's no buildings or anything. We're walking, and what's above me looks exactly as what's below me. And part of me is like, how are we even walking? How's this happening? But we're just walking right along. And as these people get closer, they most of them have got some sort of color to them, like dark reds, dark blues, dark greens. Some of them are gray, but they're not. None of them are bright, and they all feel heavy. They all feel, sad or something. They don't. They're not. They're not bright. They're carrying a heaviness. Each one of them is heavy, and it's intimidating. It's uncomfortable. And not to mention it gets more and more and more. And next thing you know, it goes from 10 to 20 to 50 to 100 to 200. And it's just they keep multiplying, and they keep getting closer and closer. And they aren't going by us as we're walking past. But um, I remember that I started focusing on that hand that's pulling me. And then I look at the back of his head because I didn't want to look at them. And it's just like that's the only thing I'm gonna look at, that because I didn't like what it felt. They were getting too close, and I guess he knew I was staring at the back of his head or staring at his hand and not looking at them, because he stopped, turned around, and kneeled to me and starts pointing at them, and I'm looking at him, and he's trying to get me to look at them, and I didn't want to. I mean, and I didn't even know this guy, but at least I felt calm with him and not with them. And he says, um, they're waiting for you. I'd be telling the untruth if I were to say that was made me feel good, because it didn't. It just, because the mind, I'm not letting go here. The mind is going, what are they going to do to me? All that type of stuff. And it sounds like a kind of like a really scary story, but it's not. It's just the lesson between the heart and the head, letting go. But anyway, I finally do look at them as he's pointing, and he says, they're waiting for you. And then he says something along the lines of earth souls to help lost souls. And I've had people ask me what exactly that means. And exactly, I'm not certain, but, we are here to help each other. We are here to, as a soul, to help each other souls grow. And as far as lost souls, if I were to, my initial thought has always been that we become lost because of the emotional burdens we carry. And that was the work I've been doing for quite a while, is helping people in emotional stuff and releasing emotional energy. So that's what I believe it ties to. Anyway, he was kneeling there, and he's saying these things to me, I'm still in my mind going, why me? Why me? And it's like he gets up and he starts to turn away and start walking, and then turns back to me and looks straight in the eye and says, I chose you. I have no idea if I was even saying this stuff out loud. It's in my mind, and he hears it and knows it. I suspect that's what it is. That part I don't remember. But when he looked at me and said, I chose you, it's like all of a sudden everything just calmed. And my mind was still going, but it wasn't the nervous energy and everything going with it, or the fear energy and stuff. Everything just kind of calmed. and we turned and we started walking again. Um, but this time I wasn't afraid of the people. I was just starting to watch them. And I also started noticing he wasn't pulling me so hard. I was actually walking with him. So I guess out of being intrigued, I just started looking back and forward, like looking at him and those coming, and then looking behind, just looking. It just, I guess the fear and stuff wasn't there. And I started realizing those that pass us were changing. Um, they were brightening up. They were starting to interact with each other. Whereas before it was just all looking at us and looking at me and looking at him and almost like leaning into us. And when we passed them, and we're not doing anything, but when we passed, those were, let's say dark blues were lighter blue, those were gray were not really bright white, but brighter, like an off-white or something, but definitely brighter. And literally when I say interacting, as once they passed or we passed them, they started interacting. It's like they started looking at each other and then walking off, going their different directions. And it was so much energy. It was just, everything was just swirling. But mind you, it was already doing that. I just went before, I just went stopped looking at the back of his head and looking at his hand. So then I just became intrigued of all this changing and why is this changing? And this guy that's pulling me is not paying any attention. He's just walking. He's just looking forward and walking. And I'm literally wanting to look at him and go like, you see this? And he's, nothing's happening, he's not doing anything. But so I'm just, for quite a while, I'm just watching this and it's so much energy and it's just, and it feels good. I'm feeling good. And it's one of those things, as a kid, we look around, we're trying to check out all this stuff and everything's new to us. And in looking forward and looking back, one of the times I look back and look forward, things had changed in the sense there was a group of people in front of us walking in a V formation. Which it turned out to be 11, but they were wearing long white robes and they were literally in a V formation in front of us, such that all these souls that were so close initially were now kind of pushed out away from us. We were never hindered in our walk, but it just kind of like opened it up. And I remember thinking, where did they come from? It was just like an instant. I look back, look forward, and all of a sudden there's these people, and they're pushing the souls, not pushing, but they're dividing as they're walking, and the souls are just, instead of being like right here, they're ways off, but everything's still happening. And we're just walking along, and the whole time I'm thinking, I don't know where we're going, but we're going. And we're just walking and walking and walking. We're not slow. This guy that's pulling me is really walking. Oh, by the way, at that point, when those people in the V formation with the long white robes are there, that's when I realized I was walking, but he wasn't pulling me anymore. He wasn't holding my hand anymore. So off and on throughout this NDE, there was changes like that, where all of a sudden something, I'm looking away and look back and things are different. And that was one of the times. And, I couldn't tell you how long we walked, but it just seemed like it was just that for the longest time, just walking. And it's like everything looked the same. Everything was just kind of spaced, space, distant stars. And was what would we say, like a vastness. It's like, I don't even see where we're going, but we're going somewhere. So eventually, in me looking back and forth, looking around, the next thing that happened was I was looking back and seeing how big the crowd was behind us and how much different they looked. When I turned back, everything had changed. The guy that was pulling me initially was gone. The image of the vastness was gone. It was like a kind of like a meadow scene that was encircled, small little meadow, very little place that is encircled by trees, and it was like a summer evening, and it's like just going from space nowhere to back on Earth, just, and everything was different, and it's like, how'd this happen? And I didn't, thoughts like, did I, pass out or something, or what happened? And I realized in front of me in a circle were these 11 people in these white robes. And the initial guy, I looked around, he wasn't anywhere around. And those people in the white robes are standing in a circle, and right in front of them, I realize on the ground is a circle of stones about the size of a baseball or a softball or something. And if I were, I've told this before, maybe 25, 30 feet in diameter. And they're all facing each other. And once again, as a kid, I'm looking around, just kind of amazed all of everything's going on. And then um, one of those scenarios, I'll look away and look back, and now I'm in the center of the circle. It's just like bam, bam. It's just immediately I'm in the center of the circle, and they're all looking at me. And as I look around, I realize all of them are looking at me, and it's men and women, but they're all wearing these long white robes, and they're wearing a necklace with a big medallion, metal medallion hanging somewhere between the chest and or the heart and the solar plexus type area. And when I look down at the ground, I'm standing in a smaller circle of stones that might be 2 to 3 feet in diameter, much, very small little circle. Literally, I'm standing in the center of it. And from the direction I'm facing, I look forward and there's this tall man, and I realize he's coming towards me. But I felt calm with him, just like with the first man. And but as he got closer, tingling started running up both my arms. And if you imagine as a kid, you're just it's almost like kind of like the not the tingling that would be quite going to arms going to sleep, but it was just this tingling, and it felt good. And I was just kind of amazed because the closer he got, the stronger it got. And anyway, he came right up to me, and I'm looking up at him. He's a tall man. I'm looking up at him, and he starts to direct me to do something with his hands. He's like, follow me with my hands. And the energy and the tingling just got more and more and more. And I wish I could say I followed him and I knew exactly what he did, but that's some of the parts I don't remember. I just remember all that tingling and all the energy, and I'm just kind of like in la la land. And then I remember him saying, hold your hands out to the side. So I may have been doing the hand stuff. I have no clue. I just remember the energy and the feeling. But he had me put my hands off to the side, so it's not like straight out, but down, and just stand there. And I'm looking around, I'm feeling, and the energy in the whole body is really stirring up. When I look up at him, I can't really see his face. He's starting to glow, like really bright, glowish, yellow. It's kind of like yellowish white. And he starts backing up and backing up, and the more he backs up, the brighter his upper torso gets. And I'm just standing there, and my whole body's tingling and shaking. And that's when I get hit by this energy from above. And it jolts me really hard. And I will tell you, when I was at the hypnotherapy session, I found out after the fact that the therapist said that she said, I thought I came off the table 2 inches. She said, your whole body jumped up when that happened. And I said, I actually jumped her. And she goes, yeah. She said, I pushed back. She said it startled her. But so that whole jolt when it happened, and I was really disoriented, but everything felt good. It was just like energy was just spinning. And, I have no idea how long it took me to kind of keep from being somewhat disoriented. I mean, it wasn't in a bad way. It was just energy, I guess. And when I kind of realized I don't know, maybe settling down, I don't even know how to say it. I realized those 11 people were walking away from me. They're already like heading out of the little meadow area. And wasn't feeling fear or anything, but my mind was like, right now what? Or where are they going? What was that? What was that? What was that? I mean, there was a lot of that was what was that? And why that happened, I still don't know. It was very significant. It was a lot of energy. It was startling. It was amazing. But I watched those people walk off our ways and keep walking. And I could tell as my senses were kind of coming back, the evening was settling down. It was starting to get a little darker and still calm, but just like, now what? What are we doing now? And once again, with those scenarios, I'm looking around and all of a sudden I look back to look towards those people and we're back in the vastness. That whole meadow scene is gone. We're back into the vastness and I'm with that guy again, but we're not walking. He's actually kneeling down beside me and I'm standing. Once again, mind you, I'm a little kid and he's an adult man, and um he's basically saying, he said it a couple times, something like, it's okay, it's all right, it's time to go, it's time for you to go. And I know I wasn't talking that time, but it's like he knew what I was thinking, because I was thinking about, we'd been there a few moments, but I was thinking about having to go back. But it wasn't concerned about going back to the family. It was going back to him telling me, you got a job to do. You got, they're here for you. Um, and it was me like slipping back into my mind thoughts of, I don't know if I can do this. And then it shifted to, I don't even know what it is. Literally it. I don't know what it is. And that's when he was like, it's okay, you can do it. And then within moments, it's like I looked at him and I looked back. I was back. I was back in the car just as my parents were pulling up to the, the hometown doctor's office. And it was one of those things that fallen 8, 9 feet head first into concrete, and had a knot on my head, but nothing else. Nothing broken, nothing going on. And I remember being like exhausted for 2 days, sleeping a lot for 2 days. Um, and I remember that the physician looked like the guy that was doing the hand movements. And way this little small town office was, we literally went in the back of the office, and there's a back door there where you can walk right into the examination room, the way it was set up at the time. And that's why we came in. And anyway, he checked me out and stuff. And then when everything seemed okay, he told me to go sit on the steps outside there, and they wanted to talk to my parents. And I just remember it just, for so many years, I just figured it was from the fall. I was like startled or confused or whatever, but now I realize it was all this stuff and my mind was trying to process, and part of me was shutting it down, and coming back into this. And I think that's where things started. It was a period of time for probably those 2 days where a certain amount of me was shutting it down. And um, maybe, who knows, maybe as a kid telling myself I dreamed it, I don't know. But and then that's when stuff started fading away, as far as what I remember, until 2019.
Oh, wow. Like that sounds so profound, and it's so interesting, right? That it seems like you were going to that place to do a task that you were chosen to do, and yet you were 4 years old. So you couldn't have known a lot about what you could do at a time, right?
Yeah, people mention things like when you have NDEs, when drew a blank, where you look back at what all you've done in your life or your mistakes and things like that. There's nothing like that, but I was only four, just within a couple of months turning 5, but I was only 4 years old. So life review, that's what I was trying to think of.
Yeah.
There was no life review. Is anything. And I've had people ask me, you know, why did it bring up now? Why in 2019 did all of it some come to you? And I think part of it was validation that because some of the work I do with people is I try to help them on a soul level as well, but also try to work with, helping the energy release the emotional energies and things that affect us now, affect us emotionally, affect us physically, spiritually, everything. But that's also tied in with the soul as well. But so some of it was validation, but I think I need to be carried back to see it from a kid's perspective. Um, if I'd remembered it all those times, all those years, would I have actually remembered it clearly or been able to say this story or even the message clearly? Would I have twisted it in my head for 40 years before doing this work and would it have been effective? I don't know. That's kind of my thinking behind it. So I feel like I probably had to go back. And mind you, I'm still learning from that. When I sit with it every once in a while, it's just like, okay, that makes sense now. As we all grow, we grow and then it's like, oh, that's why that came out that way. That's why there's still a lot I don't know and don't understand, like why this, whether you want to call them Council of 11 or whatever you call them, why them. But but I will tell you that the guy that was pulling me, probably a year, maybe 2 years after, probably a year, within a year, I'd say, of having that experience, um, I saw something come up when I was looking at art and stuff from this young girl, um, and maybe you're familiar with it. She did this painting when she was called the Prince of Peace when she was 8 years old. Akain Kramaric. I don't know. I've never heard her name pronounced, but I hope I'm not butchering it. I've said it a handful of times, but I saw a picture of the painting, and she calls it Prince of Peace, which is her when she saw Jesus, what he looked like to her, and it just threw me off because that was the guy. It was the guy, and I was like, oh, that's who it was. For a year or so, I didn't know who was pulling me. I never really considered it. But we didn't have, it wasn't like this, moment with Jesus. It was just the experience, and it was. I think it really just comes down to getting out of the head and just feeling it, letting it come. It's my lesson, one of my main lessons.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important lesson for all of us, to be honest, and most of us, because we tend to think, especially nowadays, that we're so in control of our lives, and that's very much an illusion. So the more we seem to let go and be okay with what is, the more joy we seem to find in life.
Yeah, we're living in the past because of our past woundings, because of our parents' woundings. We live in the past, and then from that, we end up living like what may happen or what could happen in the future. And we're not now. We're not in this moment. We're not, in the present moment. And that's where we're missing stuff. That's where, we're, in the past and the future is where we do the judging of people. So through my work, just what's led me to this work, I guess it's just through this type of stuff. It just, when it comes to being a human, the one thing that affects everything we do is our emotions, everything. And, it also affects what people we bring draws to us, what energy draws to us, what events happen to us, what we manifest. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when you say that a lot of the work that you do is around releasing built up emotions, I can imagine all of us carry emotions we haven't dealt with. We carry trauma, we carry all those things. in your practice, what have you seen that these repressed emotions can lead to? And what can we expect once we do the work and we release them?
Um, First, let me say, I've never studied or anything for as being I'm not a therapist or a counselor in a sense of the medical field sense or a psychologist or any of that. This work of mine is developed because of my clients. I grow as they grow, and I learn from them and stuff. So, um, I guess in answering your question, I guess the main question is, when you say what can we expect, and that's what a lot of people say, is what now? It goes back to what I was just saying is we're living in the past. We're judging people based off of what happened to us, and we're doing it by what we're feeling. So in working with people, I try to get people to understand it's just an energy. It's just an energy. And it's the mind that has labeled it as what it is. And then the mind takes that energy, and the mind's not bad. It's just, it takes the energy that is there and runs with it. The mind, the ego, whatever you want to say. And then the mind, through our mind, we say all this stuff to us for 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, whatever it is that we think is the truth, but it's not. So to answer your main question is, you know, what happens afterwards is when the feeling is gone, when that energy is gone, that is the feeling. In other words, if I work with somebody and like recently I had somebody that well, I'll tell you, not just recently, it's pretty common. I get people to come to me and they want to address something from 10, 15 years ago or something. And if we address that, a lot of times the energy doesn't move so well. But most likely there's something back in childhood, early teen years that is related to it somehow. Maybe just in feeling alone, or maybe a similar experience or something. If we can go back to that feeling and get them to let that go, what generally happens is then the stuff we're dealing with now is not that big of an issue because it's being fueled by the pain or the fear, the anger or the hurt from 10 years ago, 45 years ago, or 60 years ago. For some of my clients that are quite a bit older, if it's the stuff they've been dealing with and carrying for a long time, when you take that out of the picture, part of it, the mind kind of spins a little bit like, all right, what's happening? Because I've been working on that energy. I've been dealing with that. That's all I know. And now you've taken this away. So through the process, the person has to work on reprogramming the mind some because we've been telling ourselves what we thought was the truth for so long. Like, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, or I don't like these people, or what have you. So what it comes down to is you take that energy out and it leaves a space for your truth to come in, which is, more of the higher vibrational energy. And then we start seeing things differently. It's not, for some people, it can be a very rapid process. Others it's slow because you've been carrying this other energy for 30 years and now it's like, okay, things just don't seem quite right. But it is still work in the process of not slipping back into it. But the bottom line, it takes out that, if you can take out of a core energy, then their vibration rises. And now we just start seeing things from a different level. And if we can do that, change happens.
I love that. And I think it's really up to us to really work on those emotions and to deal with the things that have affected us in years prior. Because I think we all carry, these unreleased emotions, these scars almost like with us, and they still do damage like in our daily lives as long as we don't address it. And often enough, if we're feeling unhappy, or just constantly angry, there's a build-up of things that make us angry, and we end up having this personality of an angry person. But we can just chip away at it and work through it.
That's exactly right. And it's not just the emotional, it's the physical. I know different people in spirituality may see it differently, but I kind of look at things like there's a vibration this way and a vibration that way, and this way is more love, and maybe this way is more towards fear or judgment. And as a human, we're supposed to kind of go back and forth for the experiences. We can't stay here because that physical body can't stay way up there, but we're not meant to be down here either. And it's not really up or down. It's just where the frequency and vibrations are at. And the more we hold on to a pain, the more we slip to this side and this side and this side. And I believe the bodies can't, it's not the vibration, the right vibration for our cells and stuff. We're supposed to be kind of an average and maybe more centered. But when we end up down here, I believe we start to end up with physical stuff. I also will have people reach out to me that are for physical things, and it turns out it's actually emotional energy stored in that part of the body. And matter of fact, it's almost to the point where people, if they do come to me for physical, I can about bet they got something going on emotional. Now, whether it's not back to the childhood or if it's just something from 5 years ago, if the mind sits there and works on it and we don't release it, don't deal with it. So, it's a balance. It's the phrase, "You're never meant to carry these burdens," and I believe that's a phrase from Jesus. You were never meant to carry these burdens. We're meant to experience every one of them. But it's for the soul. It's like this amazing feat to get over that. To get past that, and it seems trivial to the human mind, but it's not trivial. And even more so, it seems trivial because when we think as an adult and we think back to what happened to you when you're 6 years old, and like, oh, you were just a kid. Like to that kid, that was major. That was major. And so throughout your life, it feels major, even though your mind's going, it's not that big of a deal. No, yeah, it is. And then it's just, but I'll give you a prime example. My father was an angry person. He was an intelligent, hardworking person, but because of some issues in his childhood, very significant issues, he was very angry. And I remember thinking long before, I mean, he passed away 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago, that long before he passed and long before I was doing energy work, I remember thinking if he doesn't let it go, it's going to kill him. He ended up getting a terminal cancer at 69 and passing away. Now, was that because of the energy or was it because that was part of his path? I'm not certain, but I do know the other health issues he dealt with and just, not seeing life because you're angry. That's what it does to us.
Yeah, I love this statement, not seeing life because you're angry. Is very often we have our own glasses, of the things that we've gone through or what we think the world owes us. And we put those on, and then we end up showing up angry or ungrateful. And then the world just responds. That's the law of attraction, right? Like it just
Yeah.
responds to whoever we are, so that we get more of that essentially.
I'll get people to come to me and they want to deal with something and we dig a little deeper and I've heard it so many times where they married someone someone like that hurt them of their mother or father. Now mind you, most people that come to me aren't hurt by their mother or father intentionally. They're not, the parents weren't mean, they were just hurt themselves, are unable to love and unavailable, just unavailable. But then in these individuals, the one parent that they couldn't get the love from, or they got the most negative comments from, is who they attracted over and over and over. And I'll have people come to me about these problem relationships, and I just like, all right, let's go back to the beginning. What energy are you carrying that is sitting there? And we manifest stuff, but a lot of it we manifest from that energy, from that feeling, because it's programmed the mind. So yeah, it's physical, it's emotional, it's all that. And so in working with the energies, it's just that, it's energy. It's energy. We can put 1,000 labels on it. We can do a couple things, but if we just pull it back to this, and it's energy that doesn't vibrate with you, but we have to be aware of it. We have to be aware that's even there. And what I do see often, and just like with some, well, for years now, I've seen it where people come to me and something comes up and they're like, I had no idea I was still dealing with that. I had forgotten all about that, or even just as a kid it happened to them, but they put it away because they had to, they couldn't voice it, couldn't deal with it, couldn't talk about it, or their parents wouldn't let them. All of a sudden it comes to the surface. And so a lot of us, yeah, are carrying that stuff we don't even realize it. And it's there. And if we can get to that and be aware of that energy and allow ourselves to feel it, acknowledge that it's there, acknowledge that I don't need it, don't want it. And for some people, it's just a matter of being in the presence of energy and movement. For others, it's almost like I got to take them back on the steps, or walk with them, I should say, not take them back, but walk with them on the steps of how it happened, whether it's intentional or not, and then let them do what they couldn't do, cry, scream, whatever back then. But it's still energy. It's still just energy.
Absolutely. So, for people that want to find you and your work, how can they reach out to you?
Well, you can get to my website, which is inthehealinglight.com. Inthehealinglight.com. I am on Facebook and Instagram. That's about the only two social media things to get on. But they can email me through the website, and if they want to reach out to me, and I'll try my best to help.